Chapter 10 Fire in the Hall. Alicent. It had been a long day, and a sensible thing to do would have been to retire for the evening. But alas, Alicent's mind was in tumult, and her body restless. After his years drinking through Essos, Prince Daemon's return to Westeros had brought Alicent nothing but grievances. Her king husband could keep his delusions, but Alicent saw the truth. The rogue prince's lust for absolute power still roosted snugly within his chest the same as a decade before. And the passing years, his second marriage nor fatherhood had changed his wicked ways, only his methods. Cloaked in the role of a distraught widower, he'd spat in the face of propriety, and hadn't presented himself for the king's arrival at Driftmark, claiming burial preparations kept him away. An excuse that had been more sincere from the mouths of Corlys and Rhaenys, but they'd still managed to show. Even the two new unnatural additions to his household had showed better manners. Daemon's cold treatment of her children and disrespect towards his king and queen was a flagrant affront. Then there was Rhaenyra. Learning a dragon egg hatched to Joffrey had been enraging enough, but watching Rhaenyra flaunt around the castle of Hightide as if her bastard had already become its lord was pushing Alicent to the edge of madness. Now all of Rhaenyra's bastard-born savages had dragons, gaining validity to their legitimacy, whilst only two of Alicent's 3 true-born sons had dragons of their own. Then, to rub salt in the wounds, Daemon's second daughter had a dragon hatched to her as well, a black beast named Ebrion, and according to those who knew dragons better than herself, it had already grown to twice the expected size. Her husband should have already decreed the dragon be given to Aemond. Lady Rhaena was a girl of 8, whilst her son was a true-born prince. The crown needed to show its might, especially now that an outsider had claimed the dragon, a matter Alicent had tried to impress upon her husband, repeatedly, on their journey to Driftmark. Your son is owed a dragon, and after your brother allowed that foreign red witch to keep a dragon, without your leave at that, the crown needs to demonstrate its power, Viserys. Alicent had pleaded with the king on the voyage to Driftmark. Your father gripes when my brother settles the realm's conflict with the blade, and now you have grievances when Daemon solves our conflict through alliances. Viserys sighed, pulling a hand through his thinning white hair. From where I'm standing, this is a great improvement, Alicent. By allowing this, the lords of Westeros are already talking of foreign dragon lords, Viserys, but their tongues would stop wagging if Aemon joined his siblings as a dragon rider. If the foreign dragon is already claimed, there's Ebrion that hatched a fortnight ago and remains too young to have bonded. Upon our return to King's Landing, the new dragon should be put in the dragon pit with the rest. Ebrion is a dragon hatched by House Velaryon, Viserys said, shaking his head. I will not show rancor with Lord Corlys at his daughter's funeral when we have several unclaimed dragons at Dragonstone. Those beasts at Dragonstone are too dangerous! There are young ones too, Alicent, Viserys said. If the boy can't claim one when his sister bonded with a grown dragon easily, then it's because he was never destined for one. But Rhaenys' son was? Aemond is your own blood, Viserys. Your true-born son. If Lord Corlys cares for the realm's stability, he must be made to see the truth too. It's only by the generosity of the crown that House Velaryon has dragons at all. The dragon is going to Corlys' grandchild, the Lady Rhaena Targaryen, Viserys said, punctuating his house's name. To Rhaenys' Targaryen's granddaughter, to Daemon's daughter, mine niece. If I was to follow such counsel, it would only sow animosity, Alicent. The dragon might have hatched on Driftmark, but it's Daemon's daughter who will claim it for her own, and Lady Rhaena is as much of House Targaryen as Aemond is. If only the king would bestow a sliver of the same favor towards their 4 true-born children as he did Daemon and Rhaenyra. What would it take? How much more could Alicent do? Her entire life, Alicent had done what was expected of her, upholding her duty to the kingdom, the family, the law, and the gods, whilst Rhaenyra and Daemon flaunted their privilege of their inheritance without shame, canoodling in whorehouses and puppeteering menacing bastards as true-born princes. And all Viserys did was turn a blind eye. For each year the king let the succession stand with Rhaenyra as heir to the throne, he was robbing Aegon of his rightful inheritance. Trouncing centuries of tradition, the laws decreed by his royal lineage and the directives of the faith. And for what? To crown a brazen, soiled, unfaithful? Alicent stopped her thoughts in their tracks. Resting her head against a cold stone wall, she inhaled deeply as a flicker of a memory flashed behind her closed lids. Of a bright-haired maiden smiling wryly under a weirwood tree. It was getting harder and harder, but Alicent reminded herself that whilst Rhaenyra's offsprings remained unclean spawns sired from the seed of the late Harwin Strong in lust, lies and weakness, the princess herself was a true-born daughter of the king. The Seven knew why, but Viserys loved his daughter, and Alicent was the queen. A queen did not deface herself with such crude speech. It was unbefitting of her station, no matter how true it was. Wrestling with these thoughts had kept her from her evening routine, and Alicent remained fully dressed with only a silver bracelet removed off her wrist. Because what would become of House Hightower if Rhaenyra became queen? Did Viserys not understand what Rhaenyra would do to her half-siblings? How could he fail to realize the realm would go to war over this? Why would so few listen to her? When would propriety, chivalry and honor be allowed to reign true? A hard knock sounded from the door, and reluctantly Alicent allowed them entrance, though her weariness fled at the sight at the door. "Aemond! What are you wearing?" Alicent exclaimed, rushing across the room when Sir Criston escorted her son inside. Aemond was in nothing but rags. "Who's seen him like this?" she asked Sir Criston, and clasped her son's face, angling it towards the light of the fire to see better. "What happened to you?" "Mother, Who's responsible for this?" "It was Is this the result of another escapade orchestrated by Rhaenyra's offspring? Those savages..." Aemond blinked. "Tell me who did this to you, Aemond." "No," he said. "My nephews weren't there, mother." Alicent turned from Aemond, her eyes flickering between Sir Criston, a couple of Valyrian household guards, and her personal maid Talia. "Go get the maester, Talia, now." "He's already been sent for, Your Grace," the pale-haired Valyrian guard said. "He'll arrive shortly." "May I be of any other assistance, Your Grace?" Talia said, suddenly eyeing the prince's rag. "Yes, fetch an attire from his chambers," she said, taking a closer look at the torn blanket her son was dressed in. It was big enough to cover him to his knees, though the blue lining along the hem and the textile made her think it's something originally crafted by House Velaryon. "Oh, Aemond, who did this to you?" Her son looked at her with fiery purple eyes. "Dragonfire," he said calmly. "What?" Alicent hissed. "I stood in the heart of Dragonfire, mother, yet I did not burn." "Sit down, Aemond. I believe you suffered a blow to your head," Alicent said, fear creeping up her neck as she led him towards his chair. "The maester will be here soon." "My head is fine, and my mind sharper than it ever was, mother." "Your nose is the worst of it. It's swollen. You're bleeding. Your hair, Aemond, is soot. You're barefooted like a beggar and your clothes are gone. Where did they go? Who gave you this rag?" "My attire went up in Dragonfire, mother, so Rubeus Hagrid gave me this." "Rubeus Hagrid? That ugly giant Daemon brought from Essos did this to my son. I will have his head. Sir Criston..." "No!" Aemond knocked Alicent's hand away. "He had nothing to do with this. Will you listen to me? If Rubeus Hagrid truly punched me, I would suffer far worse than a bloody nose. My head would be crushed into a pulp. He gave me his cloak so I wouldn't have to walk home bare as a newborn, mother. It's torn and filthy. There were more of us caught in the fire. It had to be torn in two," Aemond stated. "He's the size of a house. There was enough." "If I may shed some light on the incident, Your Grace," the pale-haired guard requested, taking a step forward. Prince Aemond arrived alongside Sir Laenor Velaryon, Sir Carl Corey, Rubeus Hagrid and Hariel Potter at the gates of High Tide, where Sir Laenor insisted everyone get cleaned up as he and Lady Hariel were in a similar state, my queen. He cast a glance at her son. I remain unaware how the prince became involved, but I saw myself that Sir Laenor left with his household knight earlier this evening, alongside Rubeus Hagrid and Lady Hariel Potter, to complete an errand with the dragon Vhagar where this incident occurred. Aemond! Alicent gasped, on the verge of pulling out her hair. How many times have I told you not to approach those beasts? I swear I will barricade you inside your quarters. What possessed you? And Vhagar! Vhagar is... At that moment there was another knock as Maester Kevlin arrived, followed closely by Talia, carrying a fresh set of clothes. But before much else could be done, Alicent's father was at the door. By the gods, the state of you, boy, Otto said, eyeing Aemond. Hurry and make yourself presentable, grandson. The king has summoned you to the Hall of Nine. Has Lady Hariel been summoned too? Aemond asked. Sir Laenor. Otto frowned. They're already there. It broke into a quarrel between Sir Laenor and myself. Lady Hariel approached and tried to make us stop, but Vhagar had already been stirred awake. Aemond explained to his king father. When they arrived, there had already been a crowd gathering in the Hall of Nine. Her husband sat the driftwood throne, while the foreigners, the Velaryons and Princess Rhaenys had gathered to get to the bottom of this evening's events, where the prince and the future king consort returned to the High Tides in rags. The commotion had attracted a larger audience of guards, maids and curious guests dwelling in the castle as well. Alicent saw Lord Bartimos Celtigar peeking his head through the doorway, sniffing a royal scandal in the air. Daemon's twin daughter stood with Lady Hariel. The oldest strong bastard was being hugged by Sir Laenor, whilst Alicent's drunk imbecile of a firstborn had been escorted in by Sir Eric and collapsed into the closest chair. Even now Aegon blinked confused, like he had no idea what was happening nor why he was made to deal with it. Sir Laenor and Lady Hariel were in a similar state as her son, hurriedly dressed with no time to wash up. Laenor had pulled a rope over his blue tunic, which wasn't even properly fitted with a belt or hems. Hariel's unruly raven hair was speckled with ash and she wore a loose brown dress under a dark cloak instead of the blue gown from before. The dragon reacted as she'd been trained to when faced with conflict, by casting fire. Aemond touched his chest, his eyes wide and fierce. That's when we were engulfed in dragonfire, father, but it did not burn us. What's this? That's... For once Alicent didn't blame her husband's indecisiveness. Aemond's explanation sounded mad, yet stating the lunacy in front of all these people would do irreversible damage to their son. You laid a hand on the king's son? Alicent asked instead, turning to Sir Laenor with all the righteous wrath of the mother above. Because though her son had been brief in his explanation, it was clear enough that there had been a fight. I did, Sir Laenor replied calmly, standing tall in the middle of the room. We laid my sister to rest only hours ago, and I was enraged enough to act rashly. I have apologized, and in the wake of what followed, the prince forgave me my anger. I did, Aemond said. You speak of dragonfire, but that is impossible, King Viserys said. Hours ago I would have said the same, your grace, Laenor argued. But it is not unheard of. There are tales of the unburned of old Valyria, and tonight we saw its magic come again. Show them, Aemond said, turning from his father to Lady Hariel. The girl startled at the direct address, looking uncertain. At 3 and 10, Lady Hariel was a skinny maiden the same height as Helena, but with few curves to draw a suitor's eye, though her face was comely enough, possessing raven black hair, a thin face and haunting green eyes, which were positively arresting in their bright hue. Though the garish scar splitting her forehead did great damage to her prospects. Hariel certainly didn't look like a dragon seed of Daemon's, but then again Rhaenyra's bastards didn't take after her either. What am I being accused of? Lady Hariel asked in Valyrian, those bright green eyes of hers narrowed in suspicion. Alicent couldn't speak the tongue herself, but she understood just enough to follow what was being said. "Show the king, Lady Hariel." Aemond changed his tongue to Valyrian, but Lady Hariel looked lost with no idea what her son was speaking of, and Alicent's heart sank. Lord Corlys and Princess Rhaenys exchanged knowing glances, and Lord Celtigar whispered something to one of his knights. What would they say of Aemond now? These tall tales of dragonfire, foul gossip of Aemond's delusions, and claims of him being unworthy of dragon riding would do great harm to their position. Surely this was a cruel setup by Sir Laenor, something Rhaenyra had put him up to. This has gone too far, Aemond, Viserys sighed exasperated. Vhagar is the most dangerous dragon in the world, and you had no business there, and now yet another dragon has rejected you. Your obsession with dragon riding endangered yourself and Sir Laenor. This will cease now. Sir Laenor has confessed to attacking our son tonight and should face proper punishment for his crime, Alicent said loudly. Sir Laenor is a grown warrior who's broken his knightly vows to the Mother above to protect the young and innocent. Our son must have suffered a blow to the head, Viserys. He should be resting with the maesters attending to him, not questioned like this. But your son tells the truth, your grace, Laenor protested angrily, addressing the king alone. Show what? Lady Hariel asked the twins quietly, looking confused between everyone. The maester, Kevlin, had walked up to Aemond. Perhaps you should sit. But he was cut off when Aemond knocked his arm to the side. I am not telling lies, and it was not by my actions that Vhagar was angered. Aemond snarled. He turned sharply away and stormed across the hall. Make them see the truth, Aemond demanded angrily, his Valyrian harsh as he grabbed Lady Hariel's arm. The entire room watched in confused alarm as Aemond pulled the girl towards the side of the hall. So unexpected the girl herself wasn't sure what was happening either. What? Hariel exclaimed, stumbling over her cloak. It was then Alicent realized Aemond wasn't moving towards the wall at all, but the fireplace. Everyone could see what would happen, but the sheer disbelief kept him rooted to the spot before it was too late. Aemond! Viserys shouted as their son yanked her towards the fire. Alicent thought he'd pushed the entire girl into the hearth, but only her arm was pulled into the crackling heat. The next few seconds turned into pure chaos as people rushed forwards and several screamed, Alicent among them, because it wasn't just the girl's arm engulfed in the fire, but her son's hand was stuck in there too. Seven hells! Hariel! The twats lost it. Get Prince Aemond out! Sir Harold yelled above the crowd. He's on fire! Alicent pushed through the crowd to reach her son, arriving just as Aemond was pulled back by a Valyrian knight. But the sleeve of his shirt had caught on fire, the same with the girl. Water! A blanket! Get a blanket! Rubius Hagrid's voice called out a nonsensical word, and next a stream appeared out of nowhere, drenching Aemond and Hariel in a shower of water that quenched the fire and sent smoke billowing through the room. Thank you, Hagrid, Lady Hariel said, using her unburned hand to put something into her pocket. What the fuck is going on here? As if the situation wasn't bad enough, at some point Daemon and Rhaenyra had arrived into the disarray, and while the princess went straight for her sons, the prince pushed through the crowd towards Lady Hariel and Sir Laenor. Alicent went weak at the knees, her shock so absolute it was hard to draw a breath, and then Sir Criston had to steady her when the lightheadedness made her sway. Daemon turned to the king, his brow arching unimpressed. Please enlighten me to what Lady Hariel stands accused of, your grace. Or do I not warrant so much as a heads up before your son started throwing ladies of my household into the fireplace? In the meanwhile, the lady in question didn't act appropriately affected. Instead of checking for injuries, Lady Hariel sighed, plucking regretfully at the burnt edges of her sleeve, reacting as if being pushed into fire was a slightly inconvenient but regular enough occurrence. Surely it wasn't. The Hall of Nine went quiet as the grave when Aemond turned to his father. See? Her spell made it so the fire did not harm us. I did not come here telling tall tales, father. Earlier this eve, Vhagar's fire consumed myself, Sir Laenor, and Lady Hariel. But we lived, he said. Uncaring, he was now soaked, his shirt burned and skin grimy as he walked towards the king, holding up his arm, showing to everyone that it remained blemish-free and whole. Eamon truly was unburnt. They both were, like something out of a series of stories of old Valyria. It was a miracle. It was an abomination. It shouldn't be possible. But Eamon had demonstrated the truth for her own two eyes to see. Alicent couldn't foresee how the events of this night would unravel anymore. This was a new type of game piece Alicent didn't know how to use. But she could see it in the odd expressions of the witnesses that it changed everything.